Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to a brand new series on Monday. We're back once again with another one make challenge, and this time it's the turn of the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup. Round two tonight finds us at the Temple of Speed, also known as Monza, just under 5.8 kilometers in length with 11 turns. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton. Alongside me is Jesse Lee, and as always, Stewie back behind the cameras. And of course, not forgetting our live stewards next door. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, indeed, John. Glad to be back for round number two. And I think the overarching message to the teams was last week wasn't very good. Let's see if we can make week two better. But it's going to be a long road because, of course, we are at the Temple of Speed, Monza, after all. It starts off with a dark and gloomy qualifying. Track is only fast. It might improve here. It's just gone 5 a.m. 15 minutes of qualifying. It's all they're going to get. And well, the good luck to them. It is going to take some doing. Low light level, tricky racetrack, I think, on the most part. It isn't a tricky racetrack. I'd say they're wrong there.
Yeah, of course, it's a fairly simple track on the terms of the face of it. But of course, tonight with three classes on your screens, of course, it's going to be everybody jostling for the position in qualifying. Pro, Silver, and Am all sharing the same circuit and sharing the same qualifying session as well. Top 10 earned themselves a Pro status in pre-qualifying. The next 16 drivers then took a Silver status, the last remaining 9 or so drivers taking the AM title. So track space is going to be key tonight. At the head of the field at the moment is Nico Kumpu, but Renault Ritchie just behind in his car. Wants to try and maybe find a way through. We know how quick, of course, Renault Ritchie can be. It's already looking very racy on the outlap, side by side already with Nico Kumpu down the back straightaway, essentially to take the lead position, shall we say, in the qualifying trainers. Two drivers electing to stay in the pit a little bit longer, maybe trying to catch the back of the train and give themselves a bit of space. A few drivers tonight are having a few problems in Ascari as well. Jesse Lee, been watching the chats, and discussion has been that final right left-hand kink even that we've just seen all the cars pass over there. A lot of drivers finding the exit and the gravel trap far out to the right.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any better. This is the best these cars are probably going to handle. Track's nice and cool. The tires are not fully up to temperature, so if they think it's bad after a couple of laps, wait till they've raced on this racetrack for an hour or so. Well, it's the first lap turned here in qualifying. Why not ride on board the number one driver in the pro category, Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ritchie, who took victory from round number one. Down into the first chicane. They have a lot of names for it. I call it the Prima Variante. And then, of course, the big second corner, one of the most lovely corners of all time. You can get a run through here, especially in a Porsche Cup car. See just how well he gets on. You can see the nervousness of the steering wheel as they go through there. Now the Seconda Variante, a left-handed chicane. You don't want to get too far over the curbs to the inside. You don't want to get too far to the curbs on the outside. You certainly don't end up on the sand on the exit there. Lesmo number one. A very interesting corner. These two Lesmos, very different in scope. This one, you feel like you have to slow down a lot more for. You want to avoid the dirt by using all the runoff room, though. Second one, second Lesmo, you don't want to take the inside too much. It's an anti-banked turn, curb in that respect, and it will spit you back out if you're in your lap time. All things fine here. It doesn't look like this is an invalid lap thus far. They've done a good job, but I would say they haven't necessarily maximized as much as they possibly could do, potentially on a safe banker lap. Now through a Ascari chicane, getting all the curb, a healthy dose of counter steering there to the right. The car wanted to spin left. They were able to save it using all the curb on the exit. That was about as maximizing as you could possibly do. And of course now the Parabolica, renamed just very recently, but for some reason Sky still decided to cover up the wonderful mural Italian racing driver on the exit during the F1 Grand Prix this season. Either way, Reno Ritchie does come across the line to set the time of a 49.335, immediately beat by Nick Babin in the 41. It's a 49.335, the time everyone's chasing.
Yeah, looking very strong already, isn't it, Jesse Lee? And track status, of course, still in the fast region. So if it does flick over to optimum, track is going to be forever improving through the session. So you want to be that driver that, crosses the line 5 seconds to go or so and gets the very last lap into the session, which of course will give you the most amount of grip in the car. So timing is going to be everything tonight. Klaus Nyring up to P6 provisionally with a 150.175. Had a fantastic run out last time at Barcelona. Keep your eye on that driver as we jump on board now with Mike Redford. You can see how dark it is, of course, when they pass under the old historic banking here at Monza on the run up to the Ascari chicane. Of course, the Porsche Cup car with the limited aero, should we say. It's got a ginormous rear wing, a little bit of a splitter, but not too much, holding it back in a straight line. So top speed down into the first corner, nearly touching 280 kilometers an hour, which of course makes every braking zone that little bit longer than what you're used to, of course, in a GT3 car. A lot of these drivers, very competent GT3 drivers, but put them in a cup car, Jesse, they do become very different in their driving styles and natures.
Yeah, it certainly does. And this is going to be an interesting qualifying because we saw you actually commented on it, John, before they even got to running their first laps. They were already overtaking each other, trying to make time, trying to find space. And again, some drivers, they want to be in the lead. Some drivers don't mind falling back. If you think it's crazy out there right now here in qualifying, imagine what it's going to be like in the race, right? So two different races going on right now. The race to even race going on right about now. Most of the cars grouped up based on their category thus far. There's nothing saying that cars outside of their category can't race each other, and certainly we saw that for round number 1 at Barcelona. We expect more of the same here for round number 2. One car that is considerably not where we would expect them to, the Team Bankrupt livery number 21, Raphael Huel. They haven't set a valid lap yet. Coming around to accomplish that right now as they come around Curva Parabolica.
I think Huel invalidated possibly in Ascari, showing us a red lap on my board at the moment, Jesse Lee. So he's going to have another stab at it, of course, just under 8.5 minutes to go in the qualifying session. Still plenty of time for a few more laps yet. Driver we didn't see last time out at round 1, I believe, Juan Pablo Ordonez in the number 221 for Odox Motorsport. Of course, Odox, I believe, competing in the World Tour at the moment. So they are very seasoned at Monza just after the round 2, of course, having 6 hours, it was 12 hours actually, wasn't it, Jesse Lee, of Monza as he runs over the inside curve. And that's what we were talking about on the formation lap, essentially, of qualifying, hooking too much inside curb at Ascari, and it can fire the car off to driver's right. So it'll be a very tricky one in the race to keep that track limits down. Pavel Gajda had a little bit of a fight last time out with Andy Borman that ended in tears for both of them, eventually spinning each other and finding themselves in the wall. He goes provisionally 12th with a 150.540. Number 924 SRT Project car, obviously looking to try and improve there. Still got a few cars in the pits at the moment. This driver, Richard Hutchings, being one of them. Still yet to leave the lane, along with Les Stevenson, still yet to set a valid time. He's still in the pit lane as well, with just over 7 minutes on the clock. Time is slowly running out, so got to be very careful indeed. Joachim Shelgren, of course, a regular here at RCI now, seems to be in every single event we hear enough cast here on RCI TV. He goes to the top nearly with a 149.332. And Menes Rodriguez, of course, your last time out Silver Cup winner. He's going to want to try and propel himself towards that championship points haul here at round 2. A few yellow flags out, Jesse. Everybody going back to the pits. Maybe tracking on another set of Pirelli tyres, dropping a little bit more fuel out the car and seeing if they can eke out that last kind of extra tenth or two on their rivals to shuffle themselves forward on the grid.
That's sort of it. I talked about the race within the race. This is what we're talking about. It's strategic when you come in and go out. Of course, they had a 15-minute qualifying session. It's not based on class, so everybody out at the same time. You got 25 plus cars out there qualifying. Get a couple of laps, and then at that point, the tires are going to be past their prime. Not necessarily in general, but just to set that ultimate lap time. You're not going to get anything out of it after a couple of laps, especially in a Porsche Cup car. So you take your 992, you go back down pit lane, you make any adjustments you think you might need to make to get that extra couple of hundreds, thousands, maybe even tenths. Tenths would be fantastic at this point. Go back out there. You might get, if you left right now, 2 more runs out of this qualifying session. That might just be about it. Of course, these cars slower than standard GT3 machinery, so you get less laps. That was an invalidation and a huge moment by Wojciech Dvorak up through the Ascari chicane section. See what happened. Just too much. Yeah, got over the baguette curbs on the inside. That wasn't what screwed him up. It was the big one on exit, the one every driver is afraid of. Went too wide there, and the reason he pulled off wasn't because he crashed the car, it's because he invalidated.
Yeah, just ran too wide, of course, in the last part of Ascari that we were talking about earlier on. Menes Rodriguez doing the exact same thing, and I think that's going to be an invalid lap there for the Sim Brothers drivers. It is indeed. Martin Foster for the RPMS squad, of course, in the AM class for this event, number 44. Seen him a few times on Mondays now. He begins his run to the line. Goes up into P18, of course. Doesn't sound like a lot on the face of it, but he is second fastest AM driver at the moment, just behind Callum Kerrigan, of course, just up the road. Not by a lot. There's only a small margin in it, so he's only got to improve that little bit to shuffle himself towards the AM pole, essentially. Although it's going to be a bit tactical, Jesse Lee. We said it, didn't we? Where all categories are qualifying together. The category doesn't then shuffle you up or down the grid depending where you are. It is locked in how the timing order states it on the left hand side of your screen. So almost want to be in the grid position, obviously towards the right hand side of the circuit to get the inside line into turn 1. See if you can block your rival into turn 2, although you might find him in a mammoth run around the outside in 1. Then of course it gives him the inside for 2. So it's that tactical kind of mindset, isn't it, where you need to almost plan out the beginning of the race in your head to figure out where you're going to be come turn 1. Of course, turn 1, the pinch point of Monza, going to be on everybody's lips tonight. A clean start. Will it happen or will it not? Only time will tell.
I think we're all here anxiously awaiting the start of the race. And to your point, John, being down the inside of turn number 1 is often not a good place. So going around the outside, if you can hang there into the initial turn in of the Prima Variante, you can then get the run out into the Curva Grande. And this has not been a good couple of laps by Dvorak. You would have imagined they were in a lowrider competition in South Central Los Angeles. They're not. They're in a Porsche Cup race in the middle of Italy. And that was a scary moment. Huge hydraulic style compression going on that car. And they will at best have 1 lap to put it all together now.
Yeah, it's going to be all pressures, isn't it, on Dvorak to try and get that lap down and nailed. Menes Rodriguez now coming around the final corner. Of course, the Parabolica curve or curve of Alboreto, depending on which area you're from, etc. on that one. We did say showing your age last time at Spa, didn't we? Depending if you call it the bus stop or the final chicane, either or variation on that one. Klaus Nyring, the number 20, just behind a couple of silver drivers, of course, Dvorak and Menes Rodriguez. Going to want to try and improve that little bit more just to shuffle him ever so much closer to the pro cars ahead, of course, and Ordonez as well, just behind Nyring on the grid, kind of mixing in with the silvers at the moment. Although, of course, we did see last time out a few drivers being promoted up and down the grid to various categories. Tim Ireland did send me a message after he had done so. So, of course, they were based off the pre-qualifying time, but Joe Dorber has been pushed up into the pro category, and Les Stevenson has also been pushed up from AM to silver. So after their showing at round 1, of course, categories were adjusted as such, and it's, one of those things here at RCI where we like to try and keep everything a level playing field and keep everybody within check, and that's why we do these pre-qualifying sessions and sometimes even make tweaks on that as well. As we see a car ahead there taking to the gravel in kind of a rallycross fashion, should we say, in the 992 Ibiza Racer, really nailing the inside curb there, and car looks completely different to how we saw Dvorak's car just a few laps ago. So Ibiza Racer maybe got those dampers really dialed in on this 992 Cup car, although looks like he slightly outbrakes himself. A Parabolica skates up the kind of cambered inside line where you really want to hook the car into, and then it runs it out towards the curb, beginning his run to the line. Currently the 808 is 3rd in AM. Let's see if he can improve to the line. He goes. No improvement there. Was an improvement on time, but not enough to push himself up the grid, unfortunately.
Moving in the right direction, though. Everybody now hoping to put in the best laps of their qualifying session. The track has not changed. It's still fast. It hasn't gone to optimum, which is the best it could be, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't improved at all. very possible. The track can vary a bit in between the categories that it can show. So a newly fast track is not as good as an almost optimum fast track if you follow my logic. 14 degrees C, though, perfect time to be putting in those laps, perfect time to put an entire lap together. That's what Dvorak's going to be hoping to do here to take pole in the silver class. Doesn't need more than a couple 100ths to do it, but the last couple laps has not come off for him. He'll be looking to put that all together. A little bit of insurance at the top. Babin and Ritchie have been going at it. Miguel Reno Ritchie already had provisional pole, but put another 10th or so in the bank. A 48.640 for them. Richard Phillips from RPMS SimSport comes across the line. That's an improvement, a 49.727. Perhaps more importantly for Phillips, they're going to get one more lap here. They got to the line before it clicked over.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier. Of course, you want to be the last car on track, so you've got the most amount of Pirelli tyres, of course, laid down online. Hopefully, the track can even flip over to optimum, but it's not looking likely. Of course, with the checkered flag now out, this is the last stab for a lot of people on their laps. Juan Pablo Ordonez currently on his lap through the final corner. He will go residing P5 at the moment. Is looking good on the first couple of sector times, although he's hemorrhaged a lot of time through the curve of Alboreto. To the line he goes. Of course, a short line here does improve up into P3. So he's the man on the second row of the grid for Odox Motorsport. Fantastic show there. Just about beat Nico Kumpu's time. And now we see Miguel Martins for the DCC Motorsport car. Portuguese driver in the silver category, currently down in P13 overall. Small improvement up into P10. That's going to push him closer to Dvorak and Menez Rodriguez, of course, at the front of the silver field. And we've got a few cars still circulating around. A couple of blue ones on the map indicate no valid lap to be had. So, of course, they will not improve at all on their time. The number 911 looks like the only car currently on a valid lap from what I'm seeing. Coming around the last corner, the 911 car. Just trying to find it on the timing board. It is Renault Ritchie. Gonna come to the line. I don't know if he'll be able to improve any more. Let's have a look as he crosses. I think he did improve ever so slightly, Jesse Lee. He wasn't happy with what he set, and he felt like he had to go again with a 1:48.577, locking in your pole position time. And for once on a Monday, Jesse Lee, one driver with the fastest three sectors across the whole lap.
Yeah, I know a lot of people at home are probably like, well, yeah, of course, the fastest driver would be the fastest throughout the lap, wouldn't they? Well, that's not how it works in racing. The sectors break up different parts of the racetrack. Different drivers have different preferences, even in the same car. But yeah, that is quite rare. Miguel Reno Ritchie on pole position for the pro class and doing it with the fastest sectors for every sector. Clean sweep. Very unusual situation. Menez Rodriguez on pole for the silver class. And of course, you've got Callum Kerrigan on pole for the AM class. It is really almost like an all-star event. So many names you recognize, so many good drivers, all in the same car. It feels like a special event, but it's its own series, the Porsche Cup.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, isn't it, about the one make series? You know, you put everybody on a level playing field, all right, give or take setup changes and tweaks, etc., that some drivers may have found, but more or less, it's the same car across the field, so it really does create this level playing field. And drivers that you don't always expect to see together sometimes do end up getting together on the circuit, and it's fantastic, of course, to see on that one. Let's round through our championship standings so far. Of course, after one round, it will be pretty much set in stone from the results of Barcelona. But Renault Ritchie, of course, at the top currently with 72 points. Nick Babin chasing him down with 58. Just behind him, Joachim Shalgren on 53. Nico Kumpu with 48. Joe Dorber on 44. Klaus Neiring on 40. Christian Lindgren on 37. And Juan Pablo Ordonez on 0. Jordan Daly and Kevin Tutick unfortunately have signed out of the championship. They will take no further part in the Pro Series. Of course, we do have the silver and AM standings in the queue as well. Let's roll over to the silver class next, of course, with Renes Rodriguez on 72 points, Dvorak on 58, Benjamin Schumann on 53, and Jake Boswell had the time of his life last time at Barcelona with 48. Yao Manzo on 44, Miguel Martins on 40, Pavel Gajda on 37, Richard Phillips on 34. Les Stevenson on 31 after being promoted, of course, up from AM. Matthew Kingston Lee on 28 rounds out, of course, your top 10 in silver. Silver being the slightly more jam-packed category, shall we say, on the field. Roman Geikin on 25. John Aracer on 23. Andy Boardman and Raphael Huell yet to score. Tony Bellinger and Abe Samtima have signed out of the championship. Now, moving on to your Anfield, of course, event admin, whose idea this was. Tim Ireland at the head of the field with 65. Mike Redford just behind him with 61. Martin Foster on 57. And Callum Kerrigan on 48. Luis Villas Mas on 44, with Ibiza Racer on 40. Richard Hutchings on 37. Kevin Boss and Theobald Roskam yet to score in the championship so far. We begin to, of course, turn back to tonight's action. It's going to be a super interesting grid tonight, of course. Lots of big names, like you said, Jesse Lee and this man here, Renault Ritchie, looking to try and capitalize on his early championship lead. Pip, of course, Nick Babin to the checker flag come an hour's time. Of course, night racing here today, 14 degrees in the air, 14 degrees on the track, Jesse Lee. Pirellis are going to be in an optimum window in terms of kind of surface temperature, but are they going to struggle with core temperature, maintaining that down the, the big long drags between, of course, the final corner and turns 1 and then through the Curva Grande to the second chicane. A little bit of a heat cycle through the Lesmos before the big long run through down to Ascari. And then, of course, from Ascari down to the final turn again. There's a lot of straights where higher temperature is going to die off quite hard, especially if you've opened up your brake ducts that little bit too much.
Yeah, this weather that we're dealing with, or not necessarily the weather, but the time of the race, throws a monkey wrench in this championship. We were bathed in sunshine in Spain. We come to Italy. We're doing this in the dark, and a lot of drivers will relish the opportunity to race at a different time of day. You're racing in the day. Now you get to experience these cars in the dark. A lot of them are just hoping that they get the nice sight lines down into turn number 1 and the first couple of laps all considered, and they can just get away from the majority of the pack. And we'll see if they're able to do that. Last week at Barcelona, it was a race. Certainly, I think we could all agree it was a physical race. A lot of frustrations that came out in that race. There were a lot of incidents, self-inflicted spins, and you just worry, could that potentially happen today? With all the big curbs and the tight chicanes, you hope that wouldn't happen. But based on qualifying, there were a ton of invalidations, more than you would normally see for a GT-style race. That isn't uncommon for Porsche Cup cars to see, and we're getting closer to Halloween, so how about a Les Stevenson jump scare for you right there on the Wonder Bread car. Happy Halloween, everybody. We're coming up on it, and you know what? I've celebrated the season myself, personally. John, how about you?
Yeah, spooky Les Stevenson there on the back of his own car. Fantastic spot from Stewie, our broadcaster, in the practice server when he was checking out all the liveries. Mike Redford looks like he has elected for a pit lane start. There was a few discussions in the Porsche Cup chat, Jesse Lee, about should drivers start from the pit lane. Drivers debating it, and Mike Redford has managed it. So maybe, damage limitation into turn 1. We know how much of a pinch point turn 1 is, and some drivers being very fearful of a World Tour Split 2 style start where chaos erupted there. And you know what I say to that, Jesse Lee? Just break a little bit earlier.
Yeah, of course you would say that, John. Just break a little bit earlier. I would love and hate
break a little bit earlier
for you to be my racing engineer. I would love it and I would hate it. There would be expletives, there would be language that I cannot repeat on this broadcast. I think we'd have a ball, though. But it's a very good point. Just break a little bit earlier, take it a little bit easier. I've always said, and I will still say this, you know what the safest place on the racetrack is? It's the pit lane. And if you're going to start there, you're not going to be too terribly far behind from the field anyway. It's not going to be a big deal, and especially you can almost guarantee you're going to miss any of the opening lap shenanigans. It's not the end of the world. I've seen several drivers over the years do that strategy where they start from the pit lane. I've seen some of them win, quite frankly. Just depends on how good you actually are throughout the course of the race. But no backing down for Reno Ritchie or Nick Babin. These two, we suspect, will go head-to-head this entire championship. And in my opinion, Nick Babin needs to show something to Reno Ritchie here today to have a legitimate shot, because if Ritchie is able qualify first, get the fastest lap, and win another race, get a maximum point stay, in other words, this might be over before it starts. But if Nick Babin can respond here today at Monza, this could completely change the game. And by the way, for anyone wondering why Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ritchie did not have a national flag beside his name, we also learned that apparently we do not have the flag of Aruba, which is where Reno Ritchie hails from. If you want to know where Aruba is, it's on my side of the world. It's in between North and South America in the Atlantic.
Every day is a school day, Jesse Lee, and it's, you know, fantastic.
With me, it is, yeah.
Sim racing, of course, reaching all corners of the world, not just, of course, Europe and the main oceanic regions, but also the regions that may not, you know, be so much on the map.
It's an island. It's an absolute island.
We need an Aruba flag, Jesse Lee, for our results tally when it comes on to the broadcast. But for tonight, of course, drivers lining up 2 by 2. Of course, Nick Babin on the right-hand side of your screen. Of course, Miguel Reno Ritchie on the left-hand side, and going to be which driver can get the cleanest run down into turn 1 that could, well, walk away with this. Don't forget Joachim Shelgren on the second row. No, it's not Joachim Shelgren, sorry. It's Ordonez on the second row of the grid. He was looking very competitive with Nico Kumpu. Could they slip past and really upset the apple cart at the front of the field? And of course, you've got Shelgren and Lindgren just behind them as well, as we now roll 2 by 2, of course, towards the green flag. It drops, the lights go green, and we are racing here for round 2 of the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup. Every driver looking relatively equal on their reaction times. Nobody really jumping ahead. We've got a little bit of a 3 wide, a little bit of a jostle in the background. Everybody now stands on the anchors. Let's hope we can all get drawn up in time. Single file, please, through the second part of the chicane. We've got a small mistake there from Nico Kumpu. Sideways off the driver's right. We've got Matthew Kingston Lee in the background. He spun around. Got a driver elected to take to the escape road. Kudos for weaving around the polystyrene bollards and not destroying them as well. But towards the front of the field, of course, Miguel Reno Ritchie has managed to escape with Nick Babin, and with them, of course, has brought Ordonez. He's kept it very clean indeed as the timing board begins to kind of shuffle on the left-hand side of your screen. It's always a chaotic moment within ACC when this happens, but it is Reno Ritchie to the front with Nick Babin, Ordonez, Shelgren, Martins with a fantastic start with Menez, Rodriguez, Nyring, Borbman, Dvorak and Kumpu down into P10. He's lost a lot from the start, and contact in Lesmo 1. We've got cars sideways, everybody checking up, bunching up, and Les Stevenson has somehow managed to find his way through the middle, Jesse.
About 6 or 7 cars involved there. A couple of them involved several different times. The Wonderbread car with Les Stevenson able to somehow manage to escape further damage. I was just getting ready to comment that Foster has taken the lead in the AM class, but now I'm not too sure. And as they come through the timing beam, it isn't him at all. It is Hutchinson who was able and managed to get through there and take the lead of that class. Foster not even in the top 4 anymore. Villa Moss in Ireland, your top 3 in the AM class. Meanwhile, everybody else getting around the curve of Parabolica, coming to the line. It looks like Miguel Martins leading the silver class over Menez Rodriguez, so a little bit of a change, a shake-up there. We ride on board Christian Lindgren, looking back behind at this. Raphael Huell for the team. I can't even pronounce that. I do apologize. I called it bankrupt earlier and only just realized it isn't. No chance in hell, Stewie. There's no way I can be able to say that. Raphael Huell does just about surrender that spot for the time being. Oh, a car completely sideways just in front of us, able to save it though, as they all keep it line the stern. Huell now trying their very best to get back up there with the rest of their class. The same thing could be said. Kumpu and Lindgren trying to pick their way through these silver cars. You get up too close to the front of this field, John, it doesn't matter if you're silver or pro, the pace is pretty similar, isn't it? It's hard to make these passes.
Yeah, it's very hard indeed, and it's not all about pace, of course, in the Cup cars. Consistency is a big thing as well. Let's have a look what happened down in Telesmo 1. This could be Joe Dorber on the outside, collected Nico Kumpu maybe, and kind of chaos ensued. I don't think it's Nico Kumpu, actually. It could be his teammate in that one. It is Joe Dorber, sorry, in the black and blue car. I'm not sure who was on the outside of him, but it was Gadster being told in my ear. Again, another incident with Pavel Gadster for the SRT project. He took blows from Andy Boorman very early on at Barcelona. And again, he's been called up at round 2. Not going to be the start he wanted for this one. Klaus Nyring, though, up into P7. He's looking at the back of Menes Rodriguez, who's, of course, trying to chase down Martins. And got a few Sim Brothers kind of teams in the field as well, so I'm wondering if we're going to see a few of those helping each other along later on. And Menes Rodriguez there slightly overcooking the Parabolica, nearly running himself out of the banking. Nyring got the car tucked very nicely under into the cabin section, so we're going to see the slipstream effect probably of Nyring's number 20 now. Menes Rodriguez moves to the left to try and break the toe, but Nyring is with him all the way. We've got a car coming out of the pit lane. Be very careful it doesn't turn into 3 wide, and of course the limiter cutting in at 281 kph. Jesse Lee into turn 1 they go, line of stern, no position change, but Nyring's going to want to get a move on, very sharpish of course, with Shelgren ahead for points. It's not going to make a difference if he passes the silver ones. Going to have to catch Shelgren before he gains any more championship points. Let's have a look down into turn 1 this time. This was Dorber. This again was the kind of concertina effect. It's like someone just didn't stand on the brakes enough, and
no, it's the opposite,
bounce.
John.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. They were almost completely stopped, waiting, queuing almost to get into turn number 1.
Yeah, say turn 1 of Monza, like we said, being the pinch point. Let's have another look, this time from Klaus Nyring, a little bit further forward. Nyring almost stopped. Yeah, Nyring almost stopped on the apex, and it certainly caught a lot of drivers out on the inside line behind. But of course, you're not always expecting a car to come to a complete stop in turn 1, Jesse Lee. It's a very slow corner, but it's not quite, you know, a roll around on the kind of clutch release. It's definitely put a little bit of power down and flick the car through it. So drivers not being aware of the concertina effect, and just look how much curb Nyring takes on the inside, running on board of course with Menes Rodriguez. Nyring to the outside now, down to the curve of Alboreto, who's going to be on the wrong side going in, but can he make the line work? Of course, Menes Rodriguez did outbrake himself ever so slightly last time by. Nyring gives him the line, tries to set up for the old switchback and get a drive off the corner much better, but breaking traction in the 992, of course, going to hamper himself down into turn 1, but he's got the nose alongside just enough as they come to the start-finish line. But I think Menes Rodriguez has the momentum to pull away, and now the slipstream from Nyring down into turn 1 again. Is he going to try and size up a move? LEDs flashing on the Porsche as they reach nearly 283 kilometers. It's the last of the late breakers. Menes Rodriguez just about manages to get it pulled up in time. Nyring still line of stern, but a little wiggle from Menes Rodriguez could hamper him down into the second chicane.
Klaus Nyring very nearly had a move going on there in the Parabolica, but ended up sliding the tires, and that's the risk you run. If you try to corner too hard, you don't have aero to bail you out of that situation. The rear tires just don't have the grip, and they will start to slide out from under you. That's exactly what happened there. But was unable to get it done, and that ruined his shot down into turn 1. Because even if he would have just stayed nose to tail with him and not have that slide, still had a better run into 1, I reckon, and able, or would have been able, to attempt to make that move. Nothing doing though. They will have to go around a whole another lap at this point before Nyring gets another shot. Menes Rodriguez. Martin enjoys the lead in silver over Menes Rodriguez right now, and you have to wonder how much is it worth to him. Of course, Menes Rodriguez is not as focused or doesn't necessarily as care so much about Nyring as he does about potentially making the move on Martins, but you reckon if they were a little bit more strung out, would Menes Rodriguez consider allowing Nyring through to maybe go take the fight to Martins, maybe slow him up a little bit and kill 2 birds with 1 stone? But that certainly isn't the ideology going on, or the methodology going on in his mind right now. Meanwhile, at the very front of the field, Miguel Reno Ritchie running away with it. It's 1.5 seconds the gap, first to second, as Nick Babin is becoming smaller in the rearview mirror of the leading 911. And third place Ordonez holds on to third place, is unrivaled, doesn't have anybody directly in front of him or behind him. Here we go again.
Yeah, down into turn 1 this time. Martins on Menes Rodriguez. This is the lead for Silva. A hip and shoulder check sends Martins off into the gravel, and Menes Rodriguez capitalizes and takes the lead in silver, although Stewart's not going to look too favorably on that one. Nyring still trying to hassle the back of the 464 to find a way through as they approach the second chicane. The Variante della Roggia. Can a move be done? It doesn't look like it for Nyring, although tries to open up the corner and a slide from Menez Rodriguez. That allows Nyring through. That's going to close a little bit of time up for Martins, although of course he's now got that's Nico Kumpu just behind, Menez Rodriguez at the moment. So Martins is going to have to dispatch of Kumpu before he can even have another shot at Menez Rodriguez. But Martins with fantastic pace today in the car, and of course just behind Christian Lindgren with them as well. So very competitive names in the field. And Andy Boardman, the driver you don't often expect to see in silver, Jesse, he's just chomping at the bit as well at the back of this queue.
Yeah, all these drivers, because there was a couple of kerfuffles to be fair, but there wasn't a huge kerfuffle that has led to these giant trains of race cars. And as we go, cars will make mistakes, as one mistake has been made by Pavel Gaida. And the car that was running inside the top 20, it's just a self-spin. It is a little bit of overcorrection, sends them hard into the outside wall in Lesmo 2. And Pavel Gaida has decided to park the 924. That will be all she wrote for a driver that was in the top 20. That's how easily and quickly they can all change an end.
Yeah, of course, those not familiar with the 992 Cup car, wondering why we're seeing so many oversteer moments. Of course, no traction control in this car, only ABS, as we see Dvorak sideways at the exit of Ascari, very sensibly backs it up towards the Marshall's side of the circuit. Drivers, of course, pulling over to the left to avoid the slower moving car. And I'm wondering, Jesse, has he had that weird hydraulic bounce that he had in qualifying that we saw nearly fire himself off into the Armco?
Yeah, either that or maybe just that a contact, something amiss there, but doing the right thing did Wojciech Dvorak. And oh my goodness, 3 wide. How do you like it here? One car down to the inside, and what's occurred is that was contact, but that was not where he got spun around. He got spun around at the end of Ascari, of course, but that was the Curva Grande. Completely different. 3 wide. The car on the inside bounced over onto the grass. There is a little bit of a divot there, of course, where the track meets the turf. And that's exactly what set that car up. We saw several cars bouncing and qualifying and on something that's not necessarily a curb. That's how easily it can happen. Nico Kumpu for Rebound Racing, looking for a move on Menez Rodriguez, who now leads in the silver class. We saw the contact and the overtake from Menez on Miguel Martins, but here it is. Menez Rodriguez is going to exit stage right, exiting Ascari. Nico Kumpu is going to go down the inside, and it's going to be a drag race down into the Parabolica.
Drag race indeed. Of course, Nico Kumpu on the wrong side of the road for the corner. Of course, the track goes to the right. Menez Rodriguez trying to go defensive, manages to draw the car up on the inside nicely, but it looks like Nico Kumpu might have slightly better drive off the corner. He's, of course, going to have the slipstream with the hole in the air being punched by the 464, and now riding on board with the diffuser cam at the back of the car. Fantastic scenes as the floodlights glitter across the side of your screen. Is Nico Kumpu going to be close enough to make a move? It looks like Menez Rodriguez's car has very good straight line speed, Jesse. He's not being hampered so much by the slipstream, and we now see Les Stevenson on John Aracer down into turn 1. Of course, John Aracer was caught up just a few laps ago with Dvorak, nearly found the gravel trap at Curva Grande. And a big slide from Les one way, then the other, manages to hold it all together, gets a bit of a weird bounce. Here he goes, it's right along, boys.
Ride him, cowboy! Let's
he's
go,
managed
Les!
to hold it. Shake and bake indeed for Les Stevenson on that one. Let's ride on board. Jesse Lee gets a wiggle one way, throws it the other way, over the curb, bouncing on the grass, gets a couple of bounces, another armful of opposite lock, and somehow manages to keep it on the straight and narrow. Les Stevenson, I don't know how you managed that one.
Well, Porsches come from Stuttgart in Germany, right? I believe they have a horse on their crest, and he was definitely riding a bucking bronco there. Somehow, some way, Les Stevenson decided to not have a nasty incident, the likes we have seen from several drivers already. That just goes to show you how quickly it can change. We will continue to see that. If we thought Barcelona was messy from a racing standpoint because they were going head-to-head, a lot of the drivers, this is one of those racetracks that's got quite high curbs. There's a fall-off when you get off of the tarmac of the racetrack. Of course, all these things lead you into making these mistakes. Or if you're used to normal GT racing, GT3 or GT4, you can do that in those cars, and it's completely fine. can't do it in a 992 Porsche Cup car because they don't have the suspension for it and they do not have the aero to bail you out. Only thing that you can do to bail yourself out is have quick hands like Les just did right then.
Yeah, that's it. Very quick hands indeed from Les Stevenson on that one. Miguel Martins now still second position in the silver category. Of course, Menez Rodriguez just a few cars up the road. Christian Lindgren, of course, in front, and behind we see Andy Boardman and Raphael Huell there having a little duel in the background. Nothing to be had. Andy Boardman still keeps the place. Meanwhile, Dvorak trying to make up places. In the number 340, of course, with a spin out of Ascari. He's decided to keep on going to see if he can, of course, capitalize any positions, but he's got to dispatch pretty much of the whole Anfield, and some of these guys aren't going to give up so easily. Vilas Mas in the number 727 on the outside. Thinks better of it to go around the outside of turn one and allows Dvorak to hold the position. Dvorak with a little soaring at the wheel as he came off the corner, but gets a good drive, and now he can set himself on to the back of Mike Redford. Meanwhile, Raphael Huell and Andy Boardman still together through Les Mode 2. Of course, it's only going to take one small mistake from either driver to allow the other one either to pass or to pull away on this one. Coming down to Ascari, of course, there's a good passing place if you can get enough of a run, but it doesn't look like Raphael Huell has that one at the moment, so he's going to have to stay line of stern for Ascari. Try and keep the line as clean as possible, but also watch his mirror because he's got Richard Phillips looming in the background, so any small mistake and Phillips could capitalize quite big. And Andy Boardman over the curb through the gravel off to the Monza Junior entry road he goes and pulls it back onto the circuit. Meanwhile, Nico Kumpu and Menez Rodriguez are still continuing their fight. Still nothing to be had here, although Kumpu looks like he's upset Menez Rodriguez ever so slightly through the curve of Alboreto, and he looks much faster coming off the corner this time. No slide from Kumpu for the Rebound Racing number 256, although the Menez Rodriguez car, Jesse Lee, just pulls away in a straight line. It looks so sleek.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. You almost wonder if maybe they're running a lower wing than some of the other cars are. Maybe most of the field has taken extra wing as an insurance policy, and perhaps Menez Rodriguez hasn't, realizing that the best defense is a good offense down the straight. You see the 69 of Andy Boardman cutting the chicane there, getting back out in front, but might still lose this spot to Raphael Huell. Huell pulling alongside the Curva Grande. There is a spot to filter in if he wants to, and he has done in the case of Andy Boardman. Richard Phillips from RPMS SimSport waits in the wings, looks for a move, thinks about it briefly into the Seconda Variante, pulls back in line again, of course, sees that there's not a line there. Boardman was peeking as well on Huell. None of them make the maneuver there, and probably for the best. They'll wait for a better opportunity later in the lap. Raphael Huell now pulling away just a little bit.
Yeah,
oh, man!
Huell looks less phased indeed, and Richard Phillips nearly running into the back of Andy Boardman, then had to bail out for sure on that one. Meanwhile, towards the AM fight, this is essentially for E3. This is Mike Redford looking back at, of course, Foster in the number 44. Foster with a strong qualifying session, but hasn't been able to capitalize as much at the beginning of the race. And of course, Mike Redford, Jesse Lee, remember, the pit lane start has probably played dividends here, as he's, of course, already on to the bottom step of the podium. Stonks indeed. Then got to catch Tim Ireland and Hutchings. Let's have a look here. Ibiza Racer on the inside. Oh, there was contact between him and Foster, and Mike Redford says, thank you very much, I'm going to have a few positions here. This could be actually Velas Mas. Apologies, maybe not Ibiza Racer. He is a position down on the timing board at the moment. It was Ibiza Racer, sorry, being told in my ears. Nico Kumpu, still nothing to be done on Menez Rodriguez, and he's going to be getting very frustrated, Jesse Lee. Of course, the car ahead is a silver car, although isn't displaying silver pace at the moment. Certainly running with the pro category is Menez Rodriguez here at Monza, and that's going to be frustrating. Of course, Nico Kumpu is going to want to try and get past, wants to catch the back of Klaus Nyring, Shelgren ahead to see if he can get some more championship points, especially after the turn one chicane that didn't go to plan. And, you know, Kumpu's going to be getting wound up right now, Jesse.
Well, Kumpu's going to also be doing damage to the tires, John, and that's not something you can do. It's not something you can recover from in this race. These tires are going to wear, and they're going to get worse. This is, every lap is as good as it's going to get. It's only going to degrade from here on out. They don't have the longevity of a GT car. A lot of drivers are not fully aware of just how bad these tires can become. It gets to a point where you almost feel like you are driving on ice block tires. And the more that you damage them, like Kumpu is, and some of the other drivers have been doing in this race, where they're sliding around and they're digging for that extra hundredth of a second, trying to get inside other guys sliding around, that's only damaging the tires. It's never going to rebound. We know in the 1.9 update, no Pirelli tire rebounds and updates, but of course it's worse on a car that doesn't have any of the added mechanical or aero grip like these cars. So anytime you slide the tires, you're only making the end of this race all the more painful. Nico Kumpu, though, knows to get up there and fight with potentially Shellgren, Klaus Dyring. They've got to make this pass on Menez Rodriguez, and it's just not happening. So every lap he gets a little bit more desperate. He fired into turn one last time, got a little loose on the exit, and might he get it done? Who knows? A little bit behind them, though, you've got Andy Boardman and Richard Phillips, the RPMS driver, trying to go the long way. That is possible, but wasn't significantly alongside, so I'll have to release Boardman this time and try it again later.
Yeah, absolutely. So Boardman maintains the position of 11th. Of course, Richard Phillips does look like the much faster car at the moment. Could that be down to tyres? Who knows? Maybe a little bit of friendly fire coming in here. Ibiza Racer and Luis Villas mass into each other in the second chicane, and teammate waits for the car to go ahead and continue on, and they switch back positions once again down the main straight. Meanwhile, Dvorak on his crusade to the front has dispatched of Foster into the first chicane, so he'll find himself up into P20. And of course, no championship points gained once again. A silver dispatching of an AM. Nothing to write home about. The next car he needs to catch is Gaikin up in P18 in the number 127. So keep your eye on Dvorak at the bottom end of the field. Meanwhile, Richard Phillips will ride on board, of course, the back straight underneath the historic banking. Looks like he's got the great toe, but still not close enough to be able to pull alongside. And the fantastic kind of method of course, one mate cup racing. You've really got to find that small advantage over your opponent to see what you can do. And all the meanwhile, Richard Phillips is going to be learning what Andy Boardman is doing, where he's weak, where he's strong, and where the RPMS Simsport car may be able to find a way past it. Exit of Ascari, Jesse Lee. Every time Boardman is over that curb and through the gravel, Pirelli tires aren't going to be loving that at all.
No, they're certainly not, and both these drivers need this spot, so this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because both these cars need to have a good race. They need to continue to climb up through this field, get more points, get themselves into championship contention. Both of them just out of that, of course. Realistically, a good race today could pay dividends a little bit later on, but having to destroy the tires to do that going to make it worse to keep up, because who's to say a little bit later on, maybe John O'Reilly or Les Stevenson continues to catch up. They're not damaging their tires as much. Then you're going to be completely defenseless at that point. But you can't back off here. You can't not race here. You have to go for it. And the Greased Weasel 69 has been just that little bit of a thorn in Phillips' side. Defensive driving, certainly. Excellently placed car. None of them making a mistake anywhere near big enough to open the door for the other driver. But you can totally tell Richard Phillips, aggressive driving, trying to maximize every corner, get as close, make Boardman uncomfortable. Boardman, though, unshakable right now.
Yeah, Boardman is, one of those drivers that's quite hard in a battle to upset. It does take a lot of pressure before he will cave eventually, but of course time will be ticking down all the way. Just over 38 minutes to go, but Boardman now on the defensive into Ascari. Of course, Phillips to the outside. Can he make a move stick? Absolutely not, of course, with the launch you get over the inside curb, but it's enough to upset Andy Boardman, and once again dipping a wheel in the gravel, but not going as wide as he has done the few previous laps, of course, on that one. And meanwhile, up front, Nico Kumpu still line of stern with Menez Rodriguez, still not able to find a way past the 464. With the very low wing, you just see absolute defense. Menez Rodriguez is able to take up, with Nico Kumpu, even in the slipstream. It's we've got Sim Brothers Racing in the YouTube saying, "Who's Wing Rodriguez?" as he's been christened, I think, for this event, because even in a slipstream, Jesse Lee, Nico Kumpu cannot find a way alongside him. As soon as he pulls out the draft, the car ahead just absolutely peels away, and nothing to be had. And it's a fantastic defense. It's a game of cat and mouse. Kumpu is much faster in some of these corners, but Menez Rodriguez just gets the absolute run through the exit to the next set, and that's where he's able to mount the defense. Eagle-eyed viewers, top of the screen, you'll see the pit window has opened. Just to remind you of tonight's pit stop rule set, of course, one mandatory stop must be taken within the 15-minute pit window, and we do have a fixed 25-second refueling window. So that's whether you add 1 liter of fuel, 20 liters of fuel, 50, 100, it will still cost you 25 seconds of time. And of course, tires will then cost you an additional 5 seconds of time. So we're going to have a little bit of a gamble today, Jesse Lee, I think, with some of these cars, of course, being caught up in earlier incidents. We're going to see some longer stops, maybe for a bit of damage to be fixed, but will drivers elect to take tires, of course? On the face of it, Monza, quite a straight circuit, although how that tires can bring, of course, towards the end of the race, who knows? We could see some really gambled strategies today as Nico Kumpu gets it in the wrong gear coming out of Ascari, managed to hit 6th before quickly downshifting to 5th there.
Well, normally we say it's gambling to take tires. Tonight I'm going to say the complete opposite, folks. It is a gamble to not take tires. Is it worth gaining an additional 5 seconds now for potentially losing catastrophic time with an undrivable car later? We had Jao Manso in the chat earlier saying that, yeah, did a 50-minute stint in this car on these tires. It was not fun. I think more than anything, everybody here, to keep themselves in the game, potentially have a little bit of an advantage, they're going to take tires. And what I would do is I'd wait till the exact middle, or potentially as late as possible, to come into the pit lane to have the freshest possible tires at the end of this race. Nico Kumpu, the first to come in, pits from the top 10, trying to do the undercut to get around Inez Rodriguez. We'll keep you abreast of the times in the pit lane, and we'll try to decipher exactly what they mean. But I would reckon nearly 3/4 of this field probably going to take tires.
Yeah, I'd say you'd be pretty silly not to. I mean, you know, looking at Monza, on the face of it, of course, there's lots of straights between the corners, but again, the corners are where you can really make up time. And Mike Redford off at turn 1 by the looks of it, although he's managed to catch up to Tim Ireland, of course, just a few laps ago. He's currently 3rd in AM, tries to move down the inside. Tim turns in, nothing to be had, and then Redford understeers on the second part of the turn, and Dvorak getting involved as well, of course, with his crusade up into the silver field, trying to get through the AM drivers before, of course, he can have a sniff at any championship points, and he's still got to get through Tim Ireland, not Tim Ireland, sorry, the timing's bugged out. I think he has got through Tim Ireland, and now Mike Redford up the inside into Lesmo 1, and now he's got to catch ahead, of course, Hutchings, who's kind of stormed away from the Anfield, kept it relatively clean, and we've got a yellow flag out at the second chicane. Ibiza Racer over the speed humps. Let's have a look what's happened here, Jesse.
Ibiza Racer is going to completely loop this car at some point. Was it on exit? Yes, it was. And they're going to make contact with that barrier that juts out that protects the cars from the JCB and the JCB from the cars. But I will say that was a very dangerous U-turn that Racer did there. I know that they would have known that there's no cars there, but rather besides, it's so much easier to pull off. You had all that room in the runoff to do a U-turn. You could just use that reverse gear. I always said, if I buy a car that has 7 gears, 6 forward and 1 reverse, I'm going to use every damn one of them, and don't know why so many race car drivers refuse to use the one that can bail them out of a sketchy situation. Les Stevenson has made their way around John Razor, and the Wonder Bread car is up the road, and much to the dismay of John Razor, he's got a handsome gentleman to look at for the next couple of laps.
Yeah, he's going to have to stare at the back of Les Stevenson's car.
Stewie, do the thing. Do the thing, Stewie.
On the on the rear bumper of that one. TV cameras catching it very well indeed. But let's have a closer look if you weren't here earlier on in the broadcast when we
look at that man. You may not like it, ladies and gentlemen of the world, but this is what peak performance looks like. And what I was actually asking Stewie to do was go in car with a racer and show what a racer sees. But that is a heck of a thing. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Can you imagine you're in a race, your car's not handling great because it's a Porsche Cup car, it's somewhere in the middle of the race, you're trying to plot your pit strategy, you're racing a guy, he passes you, and this is your life.
Yeah, it's not a scenario I want to be in, let's say. It's almost similar to when Snooty McFlude was running the hideous Ginetta livery just a few seasons ago, and That's the stuff of nightmares right there. Turning our attention back to the race for a moment, though. Renault Ritchie is your next car down the pit lane. Foster has also pitted alongside Kumpu, and we've got a few of the AM drivers at the back in as well. Martin's down the lane, and Dvorak off at Ascari again. Jesse Lee to driver's right.
Yep, it certainly is. It's getting to that point of the race, and now you start to wonder, is anybody not going to take tires? And some of this isn't that. Some of that, this spin by Dvorak, that it's just been a problem spot for him all race long. That's counting practice and qualifying. That might be the third or fourth time that Wojciech Dvorak has had an incident in Ascaria. A love affair, certainly, at this point with that one particular wall. But that wasn't tire related. That was hopping the curb and suspension related. There's not a whole lot you can do about that, but softening the car up quite a bit. But at some point too, with a lot of these races, you start to wonder how much his tires worth. I reckon it's going to be worth a lot, but we won't know that until we get some of that data. There's a replay of some of the contact as several of the cars coming through. That was Tim Ireland, of course, at the time you saw the 69. Actually, no, Redford's, or was that the 69? Either way, contact certainly into the first chicane, and the psychedelic baby 141, the car of many colors, as I've just come to call it.
Yeah, Sendadelic baby just on that team.
Oh my goodness.
Can't be psychedelic, it'll do Austin Powerish. But yeah, fantastic livery on Tim Ireland's car, of course, from our very own RCI Phil Roberts, of course, with another epic livery, shall we say, of his repertoire.
No, groovy.
Groovy, baby, indeed. Menes Rodriguez across the line, currently leading the silver category, just under 8 minutes to go on the pit window. So we're going to see a flurry of drivers in the next few laps down pit road. And we're going to have a look to see where Nico Kumpu comes out in relation to, of course, Menes Rodriguez. Meanwhile, Raphael Huel for the Team Blaupunk, down pit lane in the number 21. Fantastic livery on that car, very reminiscent of earlier kind of 90s Porsche Le Mans liveries when they, of course, ran the GT2 car. They're very similar to a few teams of that era. Nick Babin, of course, your provisional race leader at the moment after Renault Ritchie has been down the pit lane. But counting down the list, Jesse, he's dropped all the way to P15 has Renault Ritchie. That seems like an awful lot of time to lose for a stop.
Yeah, I wonder what the time was on pit lane. It might just be that all the cars were so close to one another as Raphael Huel and Geiken into the pit lane this time. That was a standard stop for Reno Ritchie, and that's just how far they fell because nobody had really made a ton of mistakes up inside that top 10 or so. So even though he had a couple of seconds of a gap back to second place, Nick Babin, who, by the way, very early on, about 15 minutes ago, in fact, took the quickest lap of the race, but hasn't been able to match lap for lap Reno Ritchie for the majority of the race, so they continue to fall back. But it wasn't enough. That one pit stop has put them outside the top 15, and they just seem to be in a position where they're not having to fight anybody for position at the time, which is good because obviously that would just slow you down if you get stuck out in traffic. Nick Babin into the pit lanes from first place currently. Ordonez also in there. Joachim Shelgren to pit lane, and now it's like ringing the dinner bell. A lot of these cars are pitting now, not waiting to maximize as far as they possibly could. They still have some 6 minutes they could use to get in the pit lane. They haven't used it. Menes Rodriguez and Christian Lindgren all in the pit lane. I suspect more are going to follow, and they do. Gunnar Razor stays out, but Les Stevenson brings his car into the pit lane.
Yeah, and the fight, of course, we were watching earlier on with Nico Kumpu and Menes Rodriguez. This is where we're going to see, did the undercut work for Nico Kumpu? Can he get the rebound racing car ahead of Menes Rodriguez? Of course, currently stationary on pit lane is the number 464. Nico Kumpu is going to have the throttle pedal pinned in that Porsche. Is he going to be able to capitalize enough pace by doing the undercut? Of course, came out in a little bit of traffic, I believe, behind, of course, of Martins, but he did pit at separate times, so Nico Kumpu might have got very lucky indeed. And he's, of course, going to have the momentum coming around the curve of Alboreto, whereas, of course, the car ahead, Menes Rodriguez, is going to have to come from a stationary pit lane. Of course, 49 kph. Look to the right-hand side of your screen. That is a white Porsche there just ahead. The undercut, I don't think, has been enough. Jesse Lee, Menes Rodriguez has just about managed to hold on to that one, although no tire blankets, of course, on the Cup cars. Nico Kumpu's going to have lovely warm tires. Meanwhile, Menes Rodriguez and Christian Lindgren ahead are going to be on stone cold Pirelli. So can Menes Rodriguez get those tires up to temperature fairly sharpish, and of course then defend Nico Kumpu? We know the straight line speed of Menes Rodriguez is good, although the cornering speeds and the braking isn't going to be as good, especially with those cold tires. And you see how confident Nico Kumpu is compared to the car ahead. This is going to be where the Rebound Racing car needs to capitalize in Telesmo 1. Looks to the inside and makes contact. Menes Rodriguez sideways. He's going to scrub those cold set of Pirellis. That's not going to be good for the rest of the stint. Nico Kumpu, meanwhile, kind of backs out of it, allows the position to kind of reset. And of course, now we've got Miguel Martins in the background, the number 62 just behind. He's going to have a front row seat of this battle, and he's going to want to try and get past Kumpu, because of course the silver provisional leader is just up the road, and Martins nearly into the back of Kumpu, into Ascari. Jesse Lee, it's getting very dicey indeed.
Super close and super aggressive driving here. Nico Kumpu right on the back of Menes Rodriguez. Menes goes to the middle of the racetrack. Kumpu makes his move for Rebound Racing. He's going to go to the outside. He can now shift back down to the inside of the Parabolica, and now there's no overlap. There's no gap. Defensive maneuver down to the corner, and that's going to be detrimental to Menes Rodriguez. He doesn't have the grip. Here comes Nico Kumpu up the inside of the Parabolica, and he's finally going to get it done. The scrubbed, cold tires of Menes Rodriguez has been their downfall, but remember, the lower wing of the 464 could propel them back through. They're just about even now as they head down into turn number 1. Could he potentially get a fender in front, Menes Rodriguez? Yes, he can. They're dead level on the binders down into turn number 1. The inside prevails. Nico Kumpu takes it, and I just wonder how much damage has been done to Menes Rodriguez's tires. I was not overreacting when I said one single slide can basically ruin all 4 of your tires. It looked like a big one to me in the Lesmo. It could have been very damning. We'll know if the DCC Motorsport driver of Miguel Martins gets through quite easily, or just by looking at the literal body language of Menes Rodriguez's car over the next couple laps, just how much damage potentially was done with that.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep an eye on the lap times and the pace, of course, towards the end of the race to see what happens to Menes Rodriguez. Has that slide detrimented those Pirelli tires at all? And let's have a look at a race replay. This is where it all got very dicey into Ascari, and it looks like there might have been a little bit of a bump on the back. There is some paint loss on the rear of Nico Kumpu's car, and Stewie confirming in our ear, our tool has picked up a bump. So Miguel Martins being very fired up by trying to, get close to Menes Rodriguez. And now here he comes, the Portuguese driver, of course, to the last corner. Let's have another replay. This is in Lesmo 1. This is when Menes Rodriguez was hit by Kumpu, and big slide, big armfuls of opposite lock there, Jesse, and not going to be good at all, especially as Menes Rodriguez just about left the pit lane and, ended up in that slide.
Andy Boardman and the greatest last name in sim racing, Kingston Lee, into the pit lane this time by, and so is Callum Kerrigan. That should complete the cycle of pit stops here with a minute or so left to go. Of course, can't wait to the last possible second, or most guys couldn't do that simply because they're running nearly 2-minute laps around here, so a lot of them had to come in a lap or two shy just for insurance. Happened to Christian Lindgren, running in 8th place, but take a look at the stops that everyone has done. Miguel Reno Ritchie takes the lead, or retakes the lead, I should say, of the race. They did a 7.6 on pit lane. A couple of drivers doing several seconds quicker. Christian Lindgren did a 1:03, and that is sort of in the realm of not taking tires. Can't confirm that. Les Stevenson also running a 1:02.9 down the pit lane. Just about everybody else is in the 107 or above bracket. Tim Ireland also in the 102 bracket. So you start to wonder, John, did those cars that are doing sub 1 minute 7-second pit stops, did they elect to not take tires?
Yeah, we're going to have to look, aren't we, towards the end of the race to see who has the pace and who doesn't. Let's make a note, Christian Lindgren and Les Stevenson potentially no tyres. Tim Ireland running into the back of Mike Redford, and that's not good at all. Redford's be very frustrated by that one, and Tim Ireland, of course, waiting before getting back underway through the bollards allows Redford to kind of drive away and escape through the Curva Grande before Tim Ireland gets underway. So Tim's given himself a very big penalty there, and I'm sure the stewards will be looking at that one. We have a closer look, I think, at the livery here of course,
Judo chop.
of course, Phil Roberts, behave on the back bumper, and the rear number blending in nicely with the livery. Send it, baby, on the wing. And then at the front, I think we've got another kind of Phil-related pun on the front bumper lower down. I won't bite hard. He certainly bit Mike Redford very hard into turn one.
Phil Roberts, you've outdone yourself with this livery. I think this might be the best of the lot, to be fair with it.
There's even a parody brand on the front bumper as well, and the carbon inlets in the middle. Richard Phillips and Les Stevenson side by side through turn one. They go a little bit of a hip and shoulder check. Meanwhile, through the Curva Grande, still side by side towards the second chicane. It's going to be the last of the late breakers who can outbrake each other, and I think Les Stevenson gave that one up. Richard Phillips overcommitted. Over the sausage curb he goes, and Les is going to manage to get back up the inside for Lesmo 1, although Phillips, hard on the power, manages to drag away from Stevenson. I think Les maybe backed out of that one ever so slightly to give Phillips the ideal line through Lesmo 1, and their line of stern now through Lesmo 2. Nothing to be had there, and Phillips looks like he's got the much better run down to Ascari. Meanwhile, we do have a final stewards report from a lot of the lap 1 incidents. They are looking relatively tied up in the notes, so interrupt me if something does happen on circuit. Jesse Lee, incident on lap 1, turn 1 involving the 294 and the 256, no further action. 256 spins at turn 1, and the 294 does not have time to avoid. Incident lap 1, turn 1 involving the 727 and the 777, 28 and the 555 is a racing incident. 28 fails to slow in time for the corner, causing a minor contact ahead, but behind with an unfortunate accordion effect to ensue. Incident lap 1, turn 1 again, involving the 28 and the 555. After the 28 makes contact with the 555, they continue to press the throttle and continue to make avoidable contact before cutting the chicane. That was a 5 seconds on that one. Incident lap 1, turn 6, involving the 924 and the 777 and the 127. That was the concertina we saw at the Lesmo 1. Drive through for the 777 for a takeout on the 127, no position returned. Incident lap 1, turn 6, involving the 924, the 777. A warning for the 924 for not holding the brakes after a takeout. We then have a couple of minor contacts racing incidences between the 21, the 22, the 808 and the 95, and then the 256 as well. Then we have a warning for the car 256 for a lap 4, turn 2, involving the 69 and the 256. Another minor contact between the 62 and the 464. We then have a no further action on the 340 and the 21. 340 closing the door whilst the 21 is still beside, leading to contact. No further action as the 340 lost out on position anyway. That was lap 5, turn 2. Incident lap 5, turn 3. This looks like a fairly long one indeed. The 340, the 699, the 46 and the 22 racing incident, with the 22 bouncing when two wheels are on the grass. Minor contact with the 340. The 46 reacts to the 22 bouncing on the grass and makes contact with the 699. Fortunate racing incident, but due to very close racing, 699 hits the 340 due to contact with the 46. That was when we saw, of course, the Les Stevenson, John Aracer incident through the Curva Grande after the turn 1 calamity. And then a couple more racing incident minor contacts, the 808, the 44, the 95 and the 808. 727 and the 808 and the 141 and the 95, and then another warning for the 256 for avoidable contact in turn 7, lap 18, and that's the car on your screens at the moment. Jesse Lee, Nico Kumpu has been a busy man indeed, making up a position on Christian Lindgren.
Certainly did, and I didn't think that was going to come off, but it certainly has. Nico Kumpu now up into P6, albeit with a 5-second penalty. The fight right behind him, though, very much taking on a form of their own as Lindgren and Minez Rodriguez find it out. And you've seen the Sim Brothers racing car of Minez Rodriguez fight this entire race hard with the pro field. And I've just got to say, credit to Menez Rodriguez for not backing down, because it's so easy when you're a silver driver to just sit there and go, you know, it's not my fight. They can do more damage to me. But to have that trust with the other drivers and to race them like they have done, it shows that there's a lot of trust there, but also quite smart indeed. On board with Nick Babin, this for the lead of the race, and it's all gone wrong. Couldn't possibly sight his corner exit of Ascari right there, ends up going over the curbs and loses just a little bit of time. That gap, by the way, their pit stops were near identical. Reno Ritchie and Nick Babin up at the front of this field, and a car in the background, hard into the wall. Is that Miguel Martins? It is!
Well, Miguel Martins into the wall through Ascari. Let's have a look right on board the helmet cam here. Brakes, of course, on his normal point, flicks it over the left curb, changes direction towards the right, runs through the gully, over the sausage curb, at the wrong angle, through the gravel. Bit of a weird bounce. We've seen Dvorak's car do it, firing him off into driver's right. I think we're going to have to pay Monza a considerable amount of money, Jesse Lee, at the end of this event for the gravel on the exit of Ascari. Every single driver hooking a lot of it out, and I think we're going to have a lot of gravel-filled Porsches down in Parc Ferme today.
We're going to have a free sandbox after this, pretty much, is what we're going to do. Or if anybody needs their driveway redone, we'll just bring our 992s over to you and shake them out into the driveway, shall we? It's unfortunately how this race has gone for so many cars. We jest, of course, but it is just how difficult it was, and there was no possible way. We tried to set it up pre-race today of just how impossibly difficult this race was going to be, and even still, I felt like we undersold it a little bit. This is not average drivers on an average track day. These are great drivers out here making these mistakes. These cars are absolutely punishing. You make one tiny mistake, and it's all over for certain. Geiken trying to make a move. He's going to go the long way here. I felt like Hutchins just sort of broke there a little extra to allow Geiken, maybe afraid Geiken was going to overrun the corner into him. That doesn't happen. Geiken goes all the way around the outside. The inside for Hutchins does eventually come out on top. And meanwhile, right in the background of that, you saw this car for Callum Kerrigan going through the chicane for when you don't make it, and they will rejoin the race. No further incident. We've seen several cars do that tonight. A lot of times we see them just go straight through and hit the foam barriers. It is nice that they're actually respecting the oval chicane in that section. The 44 car just gone off in the Seconda Variante. And that is Martin Foster, a man who started this race, or at the end of the first lap anyway, was leading the AM class. And yeah, another familiar style of incident.
Yeah, it's almost a one-to-one, wasn't it? We saw earlier with Ibiza Racer in exactly the same manner. Lit the tyres up out of the second chicane and just managed to find the safer barrier towards the inside line. Meanwhile, Richard Phillips and Andy Boardman still having a battle, and Boardman's having to escape over the inside of the chicane. Phillips, a flash of the lights there to say probably not happy with the defense of that one. Maybe felt like he's been done out of a place. He could, of course, gone up into P11. I just want to touch on Nico Kumpu's 5-second penalty. It was for the second warning I read out just as I finished the steward's reports. It had been upgraded to a 5-second penalty. That's, of course, for the second warning for Nico Kumpu today. We then have an incident, lap 18, turn 10, involving the 256 and the 62, Dean Racing incident, minor contact. Lap 20, turn 3, involving the 95 and the 141. 15 seconds for the number 141. That's Tim Ireland. We saw that earlier. Take out, but position return. That was down into, of course, second chicane. That one firing off. We then skip all the way back to lap 5, turn 1. So we've dialed back a good 15 laps or so. The 699 and the 46. That's John Aracer and, of course, Les Stevenson on that one. The 46 is not able to make the corner with a car alongside him, and the 699 has to go off the track. That ends up in a warning. Lap 21, turn 3, involving the 22, just on its own, a racing incident, minor contact. So, what happened there? And Alan Kerrigan, let's have another look at a race replay. Again, a one-to-one incident, but doesn't find the wall this time. Kept it out of the wall, manages to get it spun back around and on the straight and narrow, but nearly, again, a third time, should we say, of a mirror incident in the second chicane. Meanwhile, Richard Phillips now alongside Andy Boardman in the drag into turn one. Of course, Miguel Martins just ahead of them. I don't think he's going to be a hamper on this fight. Boardman, the last of the late breakers. Can he get the car drawn up in time? This time he does. Mounts a fantastic defense into the second part, but a big wiggle on the exit for Boardman. Finds himself with a tank slapper, and that allows Richard Phillips through. And that's what we were talking about, Jesse Lee. You just need a small, minute mistake, and that's it. It's all over.
In a GT car, even that mistake wouldn't have really cost you too much because you would have had the grip to continue on. In these cars, you're forced to get out of the gas. Normally, you're used to just stepping on it and you'll power out of it. You'll be fine. The traction control and all that will bail you out. That's not how it works in these cars. You don't have the grip. You're forced to get out of it unless you make a bigger mistake or end up into the wall. And just everything that they could possibly do there for Andy Boardman to keep that car out of a wall, because they were one snap away from ending into the Tech Pro somewhere on the outside of the racetrack. Richard Phillips is sitting there thinking, yes, please, finally, I'm through. But now Phillips has to be aware that if he has a mistake like that, he could bring Boardman right back into the fight. Of course, Phillips is more concerned with Miguel Martins, and just up in front of this road, this gap was up to a second. Remember when Babin had a really bad Ascari? It's taken some laps, but here is Nick Babin right on the back of Miguel Reno Ritchie for the second time. It's take number 2 for these two, fighting for the lead and the overall win.
Yeah, action replay almost at this point, isn't it? We saw this a few laps ago. Cars locked bumper to bumper, and the time has reared its head again. Just under 11 minutes to go for Nick Babin to be able to capitalize on Renault Ritchie just up the road. Of course, these guys do have some traffic in front of them just coming through the Lesmo sections now. We've got a small train of about 3 or 4 cars, I would say, on the circuit map, and one of those being a couple of AM drivers in there as well. That's Foster in the Aqua and red car, and then you've got Dvorak just ahead as well. So, you know, drivers that aren't on the kind of pace of the pro level. So going to be very heads-up driving from Renault Ritchie, and I think he's going to catch him at just the right time on the exit of Ascari, so he's going to be able to dispatch a Foster quite quickly, but I'm not sure if he'll get close to Dvorak on the run down to the final turn.
Man.
That might have to wait for the start-finish straight, as Nick Babin using all of that gravel and some more, as we keep seeing it time and time again. Nobody being punished at the moment for track limits. Meanwhile, Miguel Martins on the back of Richard Phillips. He's managed to get through Andy Boardman as well, Jesse.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Looks like Miguel Martins looking up the inside of the Lesmo. Both cars sideways as they exit the corner. Phillips just in front, but here comes Miguel Martins. That was Lesmo too. They're making the run up to Ascari. Who's got the lower wing? Who's got the better brakes? And who's got the better line into the Ascari? It looks like it's going to be Phillips as he's able to pull clear. Did Martins back out to allow that to happen? We may never know. Martins back in the fight, trying to stay glued to the bumper of Phillips, and they do through that section. Both cars completely off of the racetrack, off into the gravel ever so slightly, but they maintain control of their Porsche Cup vehicles. Now into the Parabolica with a little bit of space between them, and I mean only a little bit of space. That minor mistake we saw from Babin through Ascari the last time was a carbon copy of the first one we saw, and it lost him the exact same time. Just about a second between him and Reno Ritchie again. Babin's going to have to reload for a third time, the same way Miguel Martins is already reloading on the back of Richard Phillips.
Yeah, of course, this is for silver honors at the moment on your screen. This will be for third position.
Might as well be for the win. They don't care.
Might as well be. They don't indeed. But they do have to be careful, Jesse Lee, because, of course, Andy Boardman is just behind, and any small mistake earlier on can lose you about a second of time, and Boardman is within that window very comfortably. 0.8 seconds or so separates Martins from Boardman, so you have to be very heads up in the moves they do take, because if they get tussled in a fight, Boardman will just sail on past and won't even realize it's happening until it's too late. I feel like we haven't had enough of a calendar breakdown this week at RCI either. Of course, just under 10 minutes to go. I've not even touched on what's going on this week. Of course, everything's getting a little bit busier here at RCI as we begin to fire up into the kind of autumn winter area of the year when sim racing, of course, does take off. Wednesday this week, of course, our Team Solo Championship heads to round 3 at Silverstone. RCI Esports Yellow taking victory at round 2 from MRT KTM and Kaiju Racing in third. Friday sees our GT Sprint Challenge Season 12 heading to Bathurst for round 3. Joachim Shelgren won pro from Romano Berenik and Christoph Verstappen last week. Silver honours were taken once again by Snoody McFlood, Reese Wilkinson and Aridus Partes in third. Saturday also continues with the Bathurst theme in the wake of Friday, of course, with Night Owl, Harry Conway taking round 2 honours in pro with Joe Dorber and Jordan Daly nipping at his heels. Roman Fralla, Ingo Lopez and Sahil Mustak taking silver honours last week. And also this week, we have had a big announcement at RCI as Andy Boardman goes for the big send around the outside into turn 1. Miguel Martins on the inside. Boardman outbreaks himself, has to cut the chicane for a third time, but he's going to have to give that position back because that's not going to be a favoured one in the eyes of the stewards, and he does so. Miguel Martins manages to hold on to P11. Overall, of course, P4 currently in silver. And of course, back to the big announcement. We're going back iRacing again, Jesse Lee. We're kicking off firstly, of course, with the Formula 1600 at Virginia on October 12th. We then begin with the Legends Cup on October 19th.
Miguel Martins just about wrecking the car. That's going to allow Andy Boardman through cleanly. Miguel Martins tried to power out of that, but only got more sideways, was forced to let go of the throttle, and that allowed Andy Boardman the clear shot coming out of the Seconda Variante. For the time being, Andy Boardman now up a spot.
That was nearly a mirror image again, wasn't it? That we've seen time and time again in this race, drivers finding their way to the inside line. But back to the iRacing announcement. The Legends Cup kicks off on October 19th before heading off to Charlotte 150 on October 28th. And lastly, we've got some good old multi-class in the form of the iRacing Road Championship, where we mix GT4s and MX5 Cup on circuit. That begins on November 9th. And you can, of course, sign up and pre-qualify for any events, including the iRacing ones, over on our website. That's racerci.com. And we do also have some iRacing discount codes still left over from last time we ran the iRacing series. Of course, some of you regulars may remember that one when we dipped our toe in. It is, of course, for new accounts only, but we do have a 3-month free trial, and we do also offer 12 months for $49.99 USD. If you head on over to our Discord, find the iRacing section, you can find out how to claim that all in there, and hopefully we'll see you in an iRacing event very soon. And dipped my toe in iRacing many years ago, Jesse Lee, but not so much recently. So 3 months could be interesting for me.
Yeah, I thought you were an iRacer when I first met you. I didn't realize that you hadn't really gone, fully into the pool of iRacing. I thought that's what you were sort of known for at the time. Turns out I was completely wrong with that assessment, and I think you do quite well. I think you'd have a lot of fun with iRacing. And it's great to have it back here on the RCI channel. We're going to broadcast as much of it as we possibly can. A lot of the series are set up in a way so that it's helpful for all of you at home. If you're new to iRacing, of course, the same thing that applies for ACC. Our motto is the same. No matter what your skill level, we have a split in a category for you. So don't just assume everyone's a pro and you're going to get your doors blown off. Not how it works here at RCI. We don't just cater to the fastest drivers. We make sure that everybody is welcome here at RCI. iRacing is not any different. It wasn't at the beginning of this year when we did iRacing. It's not going to be any different this fall, winter, and spring either. And the way we set it up, if you are a new member to iRacing and you do want one of our 3-month codes, of course, and race in any of those series. All those series have cars that are in the base package you get from simply signing. Of course, there will be tracks down the line, of course, that you'll have to pick up on your own accord, but want people to get involved. We here on the broadcast team, we're going to cover as much of it as possible. I'm going to try to get every single oval done for my own sake, of course. Always wanted to do oval commentary. only ever had a few opportunities to do that indeed. Miguel Martin's getting very feisty behind Boardman, a little bit restless maybe. We enter the final 3 minutes. But iRacing, it's going to be fun. You know you want to join us. Why not spin your fall iRacing with us here on RCI. Final 3 minutes of the race. The gap between first and second hasn't moved ever since that last maneuver. It's still about 1 second between them. Mike Redford's trying to make a move, though. Actually, he's being moved on.
I think this is the battle for
this is Hutchinson.
Amoners. Yeah, this is
Hutchinson.
Amoners. This is Hutchings on the outside in the white and black car. Redford to the inside. Very textbook move into turn one. Gets it signed, sealed, and delivered. Although keep it clean on the exit because he tipped the wheel. Definitely in the gravel there. And that could have been very detrimental to his run through the Curva Grande. But I think it's all signed, sealed, and stamped. And he's got Geikin ahead, of course, for the silver pack. Although it will make no difference if he gets past Geikin in the number 127. And Mike Redford, Jesse Lee, cast your eye back 58 minutes ago. He was on pit lane starting this race.
Yeah, I called it. I don't get many things right. I'm like a broken clock. I'm right twice a day. Unless it's military time, that I'm right one time a day. But I am a big fan. If you are, especially if you're in the AM class, and you start from the pit lane, it stonks. You are maximizing your opportunity to excel and perform while minimizing your opportunity to be involved in incidents. But Mike Redford, though, they've had to drive through this entire AM field, and they've just about got it done in 1 hour. It's a last to first challenge in his own class. Credit to him for doing it. And now, I said it earlier, you could do it. And there's the proof in the pudding. Mike Redford's done it. He's gone from dead last to first in his class. Top 20 even, too.
Yeah, crept just inside the top 20 as well. Very good point there. Jesse Lee indeed, as we run on board still with Miguel Martins. Nothing to be had on Andy Gorman. Got very dicey in the last lap. And meanwhile, towards the front of the field, just under a minute to go. This is going to go one more lap. Nick Babin is and has Jesse Lee nearly run out of time on the back of Renault Ritchie's number 911 Porsche. Through the curve of Alboreto they go for what will be the penultimate time the race towards the gantry. At the moment, the number 294 Shelgren, well spotted Jesse Lee in the Ascari chicane is off, and the 340 on the exit of Alboreto is off as well.
Couple of cars putting it all on the line here, trying to gain time, trying to leave it all on the racetrack. Dvorak has had a rough one, and they are just trying to get this car home. Joachim Shelgren, let's take you back to a few moments ago. Mid-incident, I can only assume it's the same thing that's plagued many drivers today. The only difference is Shelgren was running inside the top 5 when it happened to them, getting passed by several cars there. Not what Shelgren wanted at all, especially running to the checkered flag. A battle for the lead, a battle for the win. Could we potentially see it here right before we get to the end? Nick Babin's made the pass. Babin's made the pass while we've been in the replay.
Have a look, see what happened here. Down to the second chicane they go. Of course, Renault Ritchie leading Babin into this one. Stood on the brakes very well, closed up the gap completely. A little bit of a wiggle, maybe. He's braked and let him pass Jesse Lee. Nick Babin has been gifted the win.
Well, hold on. They haven't made it back to the flag yet, so this isn't for the win yet. Here comes Renault Ritchie. Renault Ritchie's trying to... Oh, something...
Babin's out of fuel.
What is going on in this race? Nick Babin leads. They're doing bumper cars down the straight between Lesmo and Ascari. The Saraguillo straight, and he is out of fuel. That's what's going on here in one of the weirdest, wildest, wackiest finishes I've ever seen. Could Ordonez for Odox Motorsport come up to take this win? Babin being pushed by Renault Ritchie. These two trying to get to the line before Ordonez gets there. He's had to abandon him. Here comes Renault Ritchie. Renault Ritchie trying to get by. He has. Here comes Ordonez, Klaus Neiring. They're all coming through. Several other cars now at the back of the field trying to bump draft the 41 home. It's going to be Miguel Renault Ritchie winning here after trying to help the 41 to the line. Nick Babin does get across the line in third place. Ordonez comes home in second. What a wild finish, and we've still got classes racing here, John.
Fantastic scenes there. Renault Ritchie thinking he was doing the good thing by pushing Babin
He said,
towards the
"Oops,
line,
gotta
and then
go."
they saw, oh, Ordonez is coming, gotta go, and left him high and dry in the middle of the curve of Alboreto, and then Dvorak came round and managed to push him to the line. So chaotic scenes there. Babin somehow with a podium finish in P3. This is Redford and Geikin now. Redford's going to gain nothing from overtaking Geikin. He could even lose the second position, and
Oh!
there is contact into Ascari between Redford and Geiking, and that's backed up. Hutchings, meanwhile, and Stewart's report could come post-race on that one. I'm not sure Redford has enough of a lead if a penalty does land its way into the inbox of the MYK racing car. That could be very detrimental indeed, but we've kind of overshadowed the silver winner. Of course, Menez Rodriguez managed to take the silver win away from Raphael Huell and Richard Phillips in third. But meanwhile, Mike Redford will take your AM honours in the number 95. His own last to first challenge started from the pit lane and managed to make it work. Hutchins in second, Tim Ireland in third. I think he's got just about enough of a gap to Foster to cement that 15-second penalty in stone. And we're just waiting, I believe, for the number 28, Callum Kerrigan is the last car on the circuit to come around the final corner. That's not been a good race for him. We've seen him through the escape road a few times, a few outbreaking moments, but he does manage to get to the end. So congratulations to Callum Kerrigan, your last car to finish today's race, and parks it neatly in a grid slot as well. But Jesse Lee, I don't think either of us could have called how that was going to go down. Babin and, of course, Renault Ritchie battling for nearly an hour. Babin out of fuel, gets pushed by Renault Ritchie. Ordonez catches them and then gets, Babin gets abandoned by Renault Ritchie and then picked up by Dvorak towards the end. And, fantastic scenes here, Jesse Lee. And this is the great thing about the one make series. But Babin just miscalculating his fuel ever so slightly. I think this is Sheldon, sorry, that we're witnessing here. This was his moment. Caught the sausage curb on the inside and nearly launched the car into the air. Very strange thing to happen there. That's the first isolated incident of that kind for this race.
The good news, bad news for Joachim Shelgren was they only ended up losing essentially one or so spots. They finished sixth. Klaus Nyring was able to get around them, but beyond that, the damage was somewhat limited because it happened on the last lap. They had gotten spread out. Folks, I'm about to ruin the ending of a film. So if you've not watched Disney Pixar's Cars, I'm going to ruin it. So you might want to not listen to me here. But at the end of the film, Lightning McQueen pushes the king, or Mr. the King as he calls him, across the line, right? So that the king can finish his last race. I don't think this was Nick Babin's last race, but Lightning McQueen did not then abandon him because Chick Hicks got close. That didn't happen. That is what happened here today. But a lovely display of friendship, perhaps sportsmanship between Renault Ritchie and Nick Babin there at the end of the race. And Ordonez just was hoping that Renault Ritchie would have saw that a little bit too late to get out from behind him. But that was brilliant stuff. And in case you're wondering, as far as I know, there is no rule in RCI that says that cars cannot push each other like that on the last lap. I know a lot of motorsports series around the world have rules about aiding a car on the last lap. As far as I know here at RCI, that is not a rule. That has never been a rule. We've seen that before. Today, perhaps, though, the most extreme case of it. I love the sportsmanship. I love the drama. What a race we've seen here today. Completely opposite in a lot of ways from a week ago at Barcelona.
Yeah, so very kind of night and day difference, wasn't it, between Barcelona and Monza tonight? But fantastic scenes, of course, with the camaraderie between all the drivers, and Ordonez in the YouTube chat with what a pace of Babin and Renault. And yeah, couldn't say more than that. Fantastic driving from everybody in the grid today. It's been a pleasure to cast, as always, up here in the booth with yourself, Jesse Lee, and to be back behind the cameras. Live stewards, been quite busy tonight, of course, with the turn one incident that did ensue, and that has all been wrapped up and nicely tied up. There's been no further stewards reports for the ones I read out, so of course all race results pending any post stewards inquiries. And Just want to say a quick thank you to everyone at home that has joined us here on the broadcast tonight. Whether it's your first time, welcome on in. We hope you've enjoyed what you've seen tonight. Whether you're just peering in and you want to get involved here with us at RCI, you can do so over on the website. That's racerci.com. And of course, a big thank you to our partners that make all this possible as well, with AK Esports, of course, providing our service solutions here. Driver61.com with 25% off your driver coaching with a link in the description below. Fanatec, of course, running our affiliate link with us as well. So if you are looking to pick up a few new pieces of hardware, I believe the new quick release has been announced for Fanatec wheelbases today. So if you want to get your hands on that, be sure to use our affiliate link. And of course, two new partners for 2023 with us here at RCI, digitalmotorsports.com, offering a plethora of services from driver training, esports championships, Simrig solutions, simulator components, and much, much more. And of course, Go Setups formed to be one of the premium esports setup stores for ACC. Whether you're looking for an esports ready setup or a safer setup for your favorite car, of course, be sure to check them out. And Jaguar Pack for 1.9 is out. Just want to plug that there. And of course, if you are struggling with the Cup car and you're listening to the broadcast, they do have a Cup car pack as well. So you can enjoy the rest of the season for a small fee. But it's been wonderful, Jesse Lee. We didn't expect tonight to end the way it did. And if you are just joining, it is certainly a broadcast to watch back.
Yeah, tell your friends, tell your grandma, wake up the parents, tell them that you got to see some of the craziest stuff that we've ever seen. And every single time we have a Porsche Cup championship, something insane happens. The racing is generally very, very hectic and it's very fun to watch. I hope it's fun for you to watch at home along with us. As you may have noticed, John and I, we get into our racing just a little bit and was hyping up the Porsche Cup series before it even started. And some people probably wondering why it's just Porsche Cup. This is one because it's RCI. Everything is crazier when it happens on RCI TV. John, I reckon we just go back to Spain and do it again next week. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think we should just, loop Barcelona and Monza maybe in the calendar. But yeah, of course, round three, we do head back to Spain for Valencia. That's next week. And then, of course, the following week, October 9th, we find ourselves at Paul Ricard. So slipstream battles, ahoy down the back straight. Maybe Menes Rodriguez can bring the setup once again with the low wing. Before round five, of course, October 16th, we head to Bathurst. And that's, of course, when the championship shall unfortunately end. But I'm very much looking forward to see cup cars around the mountain. And I don't want to wish it to be the end, but I do want it to be Bathurst. And giving a little sneak peek to Tim Ireland's championship, but I don't think I should announce it just yet. So I'm going to save that for next week. I'm going to have a speak to Tim Ireland and see what he wants me to drop that into a broadcast. But the next one is going to be fantastic again.
Certainly is. A lot of championships ongoing here at RCI right now. We announced the iRacing Championships coming up a little bit later this fall. You can check all of that out on racerci.com. You can join any season in mid championship just by signing up, doing your pre-queue that week. We'll get you in a category and in a race that coming week. The next time you'll see us here on RCI TV is this Friday, the continuation of the Friday GT Sprint Challenge. That series has already been insane and it's only ramping up. We head into another round of that. And of course, Night Owl this Saturday. And of course, we'll be seeing you next Monday again for Valencia.
Yeah, very excited to take the cup cars down to Valencia and going to be track limits ahoy next week. I can only feel with how much they're abusing here already at Monza, of course, with grass and gravel everywhere. Valencia with the AstroTurf, the huge amounts of extra tarmac in some corners. It's going to be splendid to see. But tonight, of course, from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee alongside me, and it's great to have Stewie back behind the cameras. And of course, kudos to all the live stewards in the box next to us. It's been a very busy evening for them as well. And if you do want to get involved here with us at RCI, you can do so over in our Discord. We do have a vacancies board where we're currently looking for a few commentators, a handful of broadcasters, and a bucket load of stewards. You can never have enough of those. So if you do want to get involved with us here, not necessarily racing, but with staffing, please do check out the vacancies board. But from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee, from Stewie, and from all the live stewards here at RCI TV, it's been great to have you, and we hope to see you later on in the week. Take care.